we are live. Matt Smith is out on paternity leave with baby number 7. And today, honored to have Larry Goldberg here of the Maverick Mind podcast, serial entrepreneur for Sapiens Decisions, and Tesla Larry on X. And I just triggered Siri on my new MacBook Pro. So glad to have you here, Larry. We're going to talk about the Dogefather. We're going to talk about FAFO, Tesla, a patent that they had. I think it'd be good to talk a little bit about the earnings call too. We're every Tuesday, so we didn't yet cover the earnings call on our weekly. So, Larry, thank you.
Yeah, I think the earnings call is where we should start, because that's about the beginning of this phase of news. I have to say that it was, I thought, one of the best earnings calls we've had almost ever. Before the earnings call, I always say, depends which Elon Musk turns up. And boy, did we get a really, really strong, excited, focused, committed Elon Musk. It was pretty exciting to hear his excitement. He talked last year in the last earnings call of last year about the opening a new chapter or a new book. And boy, was this a new book. I mean, we are definitely at the point where we're talking about robotaxi, autonomous vehicles, and Optimus. And so, we've definitely turned the corner. This company is looking forward, and it's looking forward at a completely new future. So it was pretty exciting call. I thought that he did a great job. I thought everybody was aligned with him on the call. So yeah, I thought that the call did everything it was supposed to do.
Yeah, as far as the input that Tesla had on their investor relations presentation and what they did on the call, they did their part. We'll talk a little bit about Wall Street analysts and how they really failed us on the call, missing like 5, really good areas that they could have addressed. But I agree with you, Larry. I think what we got is like a pulling toward the present of autonomy, just some more certainty that it's going to happen. Right. That'll be starting in Austin in June. So it's more specificity. And also that more certainty around the timeline around Optimus and them starting production this year, and just more confidence around Optimus. So I thought it was a big positive as well.
Well, I think on Optimus, we should be a little bit more specific. They're definitely in production with Optimus version 2. And that they expect to have a fair number of those in the factories by the end of the year. And then starting production of Model 3 next year and going towards mass production and starting to market it next year. So we get a sense of the timeline. And by the way, Brad, I'm not surprised by the timeline. They're pretty much aligned with where I thought they would be, if not ahead of where I thought they'd be, particularly in terms of the version numbers. I think version 3 is the first true mass production model. I think version 3 is the mass production. Version 2 is they're still somewhat in hand production. They're not going to mass production because I don't think they've dialed in the full design yet. So I thought it was very exciting. And, in terms of pricing, you and I have discussed this in the past. I think there's no doubt that, the early version 2 hand production is going to be a couple of $100,000 internal cost. And I think we'll see something like $100,000 at their cost of version 3 in the early production. That's kind of my ballpark and my thinking, just scratching, doing scratch pad calculations.
Yeah. And one bullish thing that they said on the call, I believe, was how they're thinking about pricing, and they said they would price it at the market. So essentially, like an auction. So if you want to have the first one,
Yeah.
it might even be a blind auction. Like, okay, how much you want to pay for it? And there's going to be some people that are going to be willing to pay $1 million for the first one. Maybe that might be overpaying a little bit, but
I think it's more like a negotiation over profit sharing, or
mhm,
in terms of the early years of production. So I think it's going to be a partnership, and the partnership is not just going to be the first purchase; it's going to be the long-term relationship.
mhm,
So I don't think Tesla's going to try and make billions of dollars of the first implementation. I think they're going to be looking at the long-term
yeah.
implications of the relationship with the client. So that would be my approach to it.
Yeah. And even when Matt and I model this out, and you did a great model on Farzad's channel, the first year at best is going to be a push for Tesla with
Yeah,
Optimus. Yeah,
at best.
yeah. But once they begin to scale it up, then they'll be able to do well from that. Let's talk a little bit about some things that Elon disclosed that Wall Street didn't ask about whatsoever. And the first big one was that they were battery pack constrained. That's Elon is basically putting his thumb on what the biggest constraint is in the business, and analysts failed to ask about it on the call. um,
Yeah, I'm not sure he said battery pack constrained. He said he was battery constrained. And
he said battery pack twice, but he might have been referring to the cell. So we don't know if it's quite the cell or the pack. It doesn't make sense as much. Like, I agree. You had some comments earlier on X where you're thinking it's more of the cell, because the battery pack's more of a simple product. You're not having to make the 4680s or whatever. It shouldn't be the pack. It's probably the cell. But they have plenty of Panasonic cells. We don't know about LG or what's going on with CATL, but perhaps it's the 4680. What do you think is the constraint at the battery level, Larry, if you were to speculate?
I think it's, just getting enough cells. I mean, it's just manufacturing enough cells.
Hmm.
Both factories, well, in addition to Tesla's own factory, the other factories that they're looking for supply from are both ramping up. We know that battery factories take a long time to ramp up, unless you're in China. For some reason, Chinese seem to ramp their factories much faster, but it just takes that amount of time to dial in those machines. It's a very, very, very precise and exact and demanding process.
Hmm.
And so it just takes a long time to get those machines dialed in, particularly if they're going to do the dry cell production
The dry
method.
cathode, yeah.
Yeah, and so we saw that Tesla took a year and a half, maybe even 2 years, to dial that in. And so it doesn't surprise me that the other factories are taking that time to do it. So that's what I think is the biggest constraint.
Yeah. And Tesla also had a recent patent that they got for the LFP cathode. So they didn't ask about that either. It would have been great to get a little overview of what all Tesla is doing with batteries and lithium. They're refining in Corpus Christi. They have a cathode building in Texas. We don't know. They're at least at a pilot scale now. They might be going into production at that plant in Giga, Texas. I doubt they're at a lab scale with this whole LFP thing.
We haven't had any visibility into and I tweeted out to Elon, can we have a battery day?
Mhm.
I that would be, I think this is the time, sometime this year, we would like to have a battery day to get some visibility. I mean, if they're really battery constrained, that would be, I have imagined that is the 4680s, and then maybe they can't import the LFP battery, and they can't, build them sufficiently fast. So there's so many unknowns and so many uncertainties. It would be really valuable for us to get a battery day at this point and get some sense of where they are.
Another big mess is right now Tesla is simultaneously ramping the Model Y in 3 continents in 4 factories. And that's a really big deal. Wall Street analysts tend to be more short-term based as far as what's important to them. And this has a big impact on Tesla financially this quarter.
Yeah.
They failed to ask about the impact to Tesla's quarter, how they think the ramp is going to go or be different than the Model 3 ramp, and what they expect for total Model Y sales this year. Is it going to be is Model Y, just because they had to bring production down to re-ramp, is Model Y going to be lower this year than it was last year? Ultimately, maybe these don't matter in terms of Tesla's future as far as robotaxi and Tesla bot, but financially they're really important.
Has a big impact on this year, and we have to think about several factors here. The one is European sales are flat, not only for Tesla, but for the whole industry. And we are seeing used cars in Europe crater. I mean, literally crater, down by a third across the industry. And when used car sales crater, then new car sales crater, because so many European manufacturers use their cars as slightly used. They sell them to themselves, to their channel, and then sell them on in this kind of lightly used type channel. And so when used car sales crater, that really means new car sales are cratering. So Europe is in terrible travail. And the war economy, Germany not getting cheap gas from Russia. All told, we're seeing a real, recession, amounting to a depression going on in Europe. And so their sales are really being affected. Sales in the United States are not exactly, exciting. And so there remains China. So a lot turns on
China's
what
in a recession generally.
Yeah, I mean, China is in recession, but Tesla sales have not been bad in China at all.
They were steady year over year.
Yeah, and one can imagine that with the new Y, we may see a pickup. So it's going to be a tough year. Troy has done an analysis that does not look good in terms of this year's sales. So, they're talking about another 1.77 million. He's talking about that sort of level of year. I think we're going to see some really strong sales of the new Y. I think it's
there's really, a lot of people holding off. Yeah.
So that will be very good. And then with full FSD, with unsupervised FSD coming, maybe this year that could bring a lot of revenue. So there are a lot of pluses and a lot of minuses, and it's hard to gauge where the economy is at the moment. A lot of uncertainty around the new government, and so all I see is uncertainty.
So version 13, Larry, I'm curious how it is for you. For me, it's really good. Sometimes I was just complaining my Cybertruck occasionally runs over curbs. But I just did that this morning as a human driver. I was I was meat driving and I ran over a curb, and I wasn't in a parking lot, so I didn't have that as an excuse either. Um, I'm curious, has Tesla solved the Larry Goldberg tricky thing for you, and how has it been for you?
Well, I've got the Cybertruck with the latest Cybertruck release, and I've got one of my Model 3s with the latest release, 3.6. I will tell you, 3.6 is about as perfect as we've seen. I mean, it is better than anything we've driven yet, including 13.3, .2, and .5. It really, really is good. And I just did this trip to Florida, 2,000-mile trip from North Carolina to South Florida and back. Brilliant performance. I had no safety interventions from here to there and back. I had a few very hairy safety moments where I maybe would have in the past intervened, which I probably would have intervened in the past, but didn't. I just let the car figure it out, and it did. Came close to an intervention, so but intervention free. Now, on the Cybertruck, that's not the case. On the Cybertruck, I didn't take the Cybertruck down because they changed out my inverter. At the same time, I had some fixes made to some, curb damage that I did, that the car did by itself. You said you did yours. I mean, the FSD did it for me.
Yeah.
So it was $100 or $130 actually, exactly. But anyway, bottom line is the Cybertruck is still awaiting the latest release. I'm not taking it. I'm going tomorrow to Charlotte, a couple of 100-mile trip, and I'm going to take the 3 as a result. So I'm very happy with the 13.6 .6. I lost track of all of these. And so I'm fairly confident that they'll hold their June date. Look, it may slip a month or 2 or 3 even, but this year I feel that they're going to achieve, autonomy.
Yeah, unsupervised.
Unsupervised, and they're going to start a service. Whether they'll have to have safety drivers required by Austin, time will tell. So I think it's on track. And on the Cybertruck, I wish they would actually deliver. I don't understand what the holdup is. I understand it's a different geometry, but
yeah, if I can theorize, a lot of the driving data is from maybe Model 3s and other Teslas that are bigger, and they maybe didn't have a good way to let the Cybertruck know that it's a big ballerina. It's not a little ballerina. So I'm thinking that it just doesn't know how big it is, but I'm guessing they're gathering data from actual Cybertruck owners, and they could even have it where, okay, if you're not disengaging your Cybertruck, they can use that as a prime example for what the car should be doing. So they can look for things with the accelerometers, like when it's hitting the curb. They can also collect those videos. So I think there's ways that they can collect data now, and there's 50,000 Cybertrucks out there. People, they all have FSD, or they they did before they switched from Foundation series, but they can collect data on all the cars that opt in.
Yeah, this is the one area where I thought synthetic data would be ideal. I don't understand why they can't generate synthetic data using the Cybertruck measurements. So, this is the area.
It still hasn't figured out synthetic data. They're talked about it on their latest call, or their latest stage show, and they're still talking about a pipeline, not an actual solution. So I I'm dubious still about synthetic data. Let's move on for now. Want to talk a bit about the Dogefather, but first let's talk about some FAFO. So we had a bit of a scare with tariffs. Trump threatened Canada and Mexico with tariffs of 25%. He also is putting a 10% tariff on China. I don't know if they've actually enacted that. What's interesting, though, for me is he didn't tell China how they could remedy it. So I wonder if that's a negotiating tactic where China is going to have they're going to have to say how they'll remedy it to our satisfaction. Um, but what we get, so there's a lot of fear around cars and these tariffs, legacy auto, potentially, having to shutter some factories or, lower their production. What are your thoughts like if an actual 25% tariff happened with both Mexico and Canada before we get into, what ended up happening?
On Canada, nothing. I don't, Canada trade with the United States is relatively constrained. It's not that huge. Well, it's large enough, but it can be, for the most part, it can be replaced. Probably, probably easily replaced. I mean, vehicles, it's not as if we have a shortage of manufacturing capacity for vehicles, and that's a very significant portion of it.
I think a lot of that manufacturing capacity has moved to Canada and Mexico after the original a free trade agreement was made.
Canada has always been a huge source of vehicles for the US, so I'm not sure whether it was a readjustment.
Okay.
Mexico, that is true. That's all new, and it's over the last 15 years.
Yeah,
for sure.
So what Trump was able to secure is this was before the election. So before the election, Canada talked about putting troops on the border. So that wasn't new. That allegedly happened October 31st. So that wasn't necessarily a result.
The agreement happened. The agreement happened. But what did they do about actioning it?
Yeah, that's true. So moving that forward, and they have this 30-day period now where the US is going to be like, okay, now prove it.
Yes.
Show us you're putting the measures in place.
There's a huge difference between shaking hands at Mar-a-Lago and coming up with a formal agreement and actually actioning it. So I think that people in Canada are saying, "Oh, we had this agreement already. This is all for show." No, it's not for show. It is now you have it, committed, and let's see your commitment. You've made the commitment state to state. Let's see you actually action it. So I think there's a huge difference between shaking hands at Mar-a-Lago and making the commitment as a country.
The other big thing that happened is Mexico is committing to putting 10,000 troops on their border, and that wouldn't have happened without any of this. So that's a major big difference that has happened. So Tesla, they've had to raise their prices in Canada. And Canada is threatening to punish Elon because Elon's helping out Trump, and Trump isn't favored in Canada. Go ahead.
Yeah, the Canada is really in a strange state right now politically because this prime minister is really he's a dead duck. I mean, he's going to step down. The election has got to come. I think until the election happens, we're not clear at all where Canada stands.
Yeah, I don't know, technically or legally. So I don't know if he stepped down already. John Carney, who ran the the Bank of Canada and then the Bank of England, and now he's back. He might be in his place now or soon. I'm not sure how it works there. Some of our friends in Canada can help us out with that. Um, a little more on FAFO. I think it's remarkable the number of wins that Trump has had in Central America and South America. So with Venezuela freeing some prisoners there, getting them to accept and bringing people back to their home country, um, putting pressure on Panama to stop favoring China at the Panama Canal. I didn't even know this was a thing before the election. That
Well,
China had kind of taken
China,
over the Panama Canal, and then Colombia.
well, they haven't taken over the Panama Canal. They've been contracted to run the ports at both sides of Panama, the main ports, and both sides of the Panama Canal. And this happened. We were, no news, no fanfare. Trump is the one that picked up the news and had made a political issue out of it, and he's forcing the political issue. The news today, I mean, it's still rumor, but the news today is that Chinese operators of those ports are going to be replaced. And if that happens, that would be a huge win for Trump. Huge win for Trump, particularly if an American operator took over those ports.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see where things go geopolitically. I understand people are nervous. There's a lot that's transpired in the last 2 weeks. It's almost too much to keep up with. I'm kind of burnt out. I'm like trying to keep up with it. It's just a staggering pace.
Well, what do you think about all the action around Doge?
Yeah, let's talk about the Dogefather, Elon Musk and Doge. So a big win for them as far as stopping spending at the U.S. aid agency. Go ahead, Larry.
Well, there's a huge pushback from the Democratic Party. Huge pushback. I don't think I've seen anything quite as active as this for a long time. I can't remember when last they got as exercised as they are now. Maybe the Russia. I think that's probably equivalent. And one wonders why they're so excited about it all. I mean, when you look at I've seen some of the diagrams of the grants from, the waterfall grants from one nonprofit to another nonprofit to another nonprofit, all down to a single nonprofit. I mean, this doesn't look good. They may have turned up something really serious. And by the Democratic response, it looks to me like they're touching a very important vein. So this story is not being told yet. This story is just developing. We have to see where it goes.
Yeah, so I'll make a confession here. I probably shouldn't say this, but I tend to lean libertarian. I'm not like a radical libertarian. So I'm more of a fiscal conservative. So I like that they're looking at reducing government spending. And the basic idea is, if it's not law, that they're gonna look to cut the program potentially, depending on what it is. The entitlements they're going to leave alone. They're going to look at fraud and entitlements. And I think Doge is only just beginning. So I think there's more to come. I'd say where I'm going to stay a little skeptical for now is that politicians in general, they love to be toll keepers. So they love to threaten various things. Like a couple of years ago, they threatened to tax Roth accounts, which would have been like a big pain for Peter Thiel, who cheated with his Roth and all this. They'll threaten things and they'll get people to lobby, and then they don't do it. And this is a game that they play where they get money for doing that, but also they'll essentially take a penny from a business and then award them $1 of federal money per penny that was given. and sometimes it's even better. It's like maybe a tenth of a penny gets $1.
Well, all of that,
I don't think money's out of politics, period. I'm not like that hopeful.
All of that's politics as usual.
Uh-huh.
But if you look at the latest stuff coming from these guys who are doing this investigation to US aid, and by the way, full confession, in 1964, I came into the United States under an exchange program, and I lived in the house of the guy who actually shepherded the USAID bill through Kennedy's White House, for Kennedy, through Congress. And so I got to see the inside of the first AID bill, which later became this agency, by law. Well, this agency is granting these gigantic amounts of money. I mean, small in the federal dollar universe, but it adds up, a couple of billion here and a couple of $100 billion there, and soon it's real money. But I mean, the grants that I saw, the first publication of that this team produced is like multiple grants to multiple different nonprofits, who then funnel it to other nonprofits, who then funnel it to other nonprofits, who funnel it to
like
other
shell companies.
And it all comes down to this one final big nonprofit. And it's hundreds of billions of dollars, not hundreds of millions. It's hundreds of billions of dollars into the hands of a single nonprofit from one to the other. It stinks to high heaven to me. We'll see where it comes, what they discover. But the extreme reaction to it, that sounds like something's happening.
Yeah, so I know we're being a little political, but this is the hot button topic right now.
This is not political to me. This is not political. I mean, I could care less about, AID. So I have my own view on my political views on AID, but it looks to me like serious malfeasance.
Well, so I was about to talk about Chuck Schumer. So Schumer's come out and saying that what's being done with DOGE is illegal, but the president is allowed to have advisors that are not in the government. So that's a thing that's allowed. That's legal. The other thing is that the president has certain executive powers. There's the three branches of power in the United States. There's the executive, the judicial, and the Congress. And so those systems of power are set up, and the president does have power, and they can get rid of things that are not law. They have some power of the purse. Congress doesn't have complete power over the purse. They have a great deal amount of power, but there's a lot of discretion that the president has. So Schumer has come out and said that Elon advising Trump and Trump approving these changes is illegal, and it's actually not illegal. So, Schumer's allowed to lie. Lying is legal in the United States. It's legal in most countries, but it's legal in the United States. And I believe Schumer is lying about this, and that what's happening with Doge is legal. People are freaking out because Elon's the richest person in the country, and he's making these changes, and or he's helping advise Trump to make these changes. I think it's remarkable how quickly they've acted. You saw like the whole user interface they have for looking where this money goes and like charting it out on a flow chart, and it pops up this big like 3 red flames. Okay, if this is over, I don't know what the threshold is, but if it's over 10 million, it gets 3 red flames, and let's flag that and put that on the list. Any more thoughts here, Larry?
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, and so I don't know what's legal or not legal, but I do know this, that the president has the leverage in that he has control of the executive branch. and Congress does not, and it's going to be very tough for Congress to find a way to stop this. I think that the facts that we are turning up are very, very concerning, very concerning. So time will tell. Look, what they're doing has never been done before. There's no doubt about it. I mean, what they're doing is a whole different order to what's been done before, but it has to be done because this whole NGO thing is out of control. It was never intended. There's nothing in the Constitution about this NGO business. And so I think that what we're seeing now is a very important step, both for the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. And I think we have to deal with it. And I think, it's going to result in several Supreme Court decisions, and time will tell who's got what's legal and what's not legal. But the president is acting, and he's acting in a presidential fashion. We'll see who wins this particular political scrap.
So I'm curious how far this goes. In Argentina, Javier Milei, the president there, has done a ton of reform, getting rid of things, and he will. Of the agencies that are still left in Argentina, he'll go to them and ask them, okay, which laws are you actually using?
Yeah.
And if you don't list,
I think that's coming.
Any law that you don't list that you're not using, we're gonna just get rid of it. And then if you need that law again, you can pass it again. I like the idea of let's cut a bit, and if something small breaks, then you can pass a law to get it back. It won't destroy the country.
Yeah, I mean, here it may be slightly different, but I think the leverage that this president has is that so many of these so many of these rules that have been passed by so many of these federal agencies are extra legal. They were determined to be extra legal in a recent Supreme Court decision. So all of this rulemaking, so-called rulemaking, he can tear apart. He can pull out and throw away. Now, I don't know how many of what we're looking at in this particular AID department are rules that can be scrapped. But I think that battle is going to be the theme of this 4-year presidency.
Department of Education might be going away. It might be unnecessary at the federal level. I'm not sure if it's even something that's was passed by Congress or is an executive action. I'm not clear on that.
It was definitely passed by Congress. But the point is, and strangely enough, people are even challenging me on X to say, no, education standards haven't gone down in this country. I mean, you have to be blind and deaf not to see and hear that education standards have dropped dramatically in this country. There's no question about it at all. I mean, so this education department has not fulfilled its function. It has not. And even worse is that the private universities have strayed so far from their functions. So I think there's a huge reform coming, and I think it's going to affect everybody, and I think it's a good thing.
So we're 45 minutes after the hour. Let me just see if there's some questions. Jordan, if there's something you want to pop out on the screen, you can do that. We can read that. So we talked about Tesla, FAFO, and the Dogefather. Maybe we could talk. Okay, here we go. It's not.
He's making a good point.
Could you read that out loud, Larry?
Yeah, it's not just the size that's a problem with Cybertruck's FSD. It's the four-wheel steering that's so different from the rest of the training fleet. Cortex will be chewing the data and learning. I mean, that's a very good point, Gary. It escaped me. So, yeah, I think that may be the underlying problem.
How about another one, Jordan? Let's see. You all being a little controversial in the comments. That's all right. Let's talk a little bit about lithium doping. So we have a link to Jordan's video he did 2 years ago about lithium doping. Tesla got another patent approved. So tinyurl.com/limiting the. That's Jordan Giesege's handle on X. So my producer's first name is also Jordan, not the same person. So you can go to that URL, get that loaded in a separate tab, hit pause on that, come back to here. So he talks about lithium doping, and that's maybe Larry, if you have a guess at what lithium doping is, you can give
so
it a
I think
stab.
I think there's a difference between what was announced today or what was discovered today in patent filing, and lithium doping. So lithium doping is adding the lithium content, of the anode,
Cathode.
of the cathode. But what this new patent filing is a pure lithium cathode, pure lithium.
Okay.
And so there's a huge difference. So pure lithium is very difficult to handle. It's explosive, actually. Well, it burns. It'll burn. With touching anything, it tends to ignite. Actually, I don't remember all the things that excite its ignition, but a lot of things it'll burst into flames. So that's why lithium is never used in its pure form in the cathode. But it turns out that Tesla have discovered some means of implementing a pure lithium cathode. So be interesting to see how this turns out, and whether or not it's going to make a huge difference. According to the filing, it's got a big advantage. Be great to hear Jordan's take on this new patent.
Okay. So Larry, going into this quarter, so the Model Y ramp is a big thing for Tesla.
Yeah.
How quickly that happens. Certainly they're getting tons of orders. Not like I matter, but there were a lot of people holding off for new Model Y, and I'm going to be leasing a Model Y, so that'll be I'll be hanging on to a Model Y. I love how it looks. I think it looks very similar to the Cybercab. I'm curious if they actually end up changing the design for the 3 toward this new kind of this look they have in the front.
They're not going to update the 3 for several years to come. Highly unlikely.
You think that'll take time?
Yeah. By the way, you missed discussing one of the really major announcements that Elon just threw away. I mean, he just threw aside. They're going to have a third battery pack factory, mega pack factory, and I believe it'll be in Berlin. That's my view. I think they're building it right now in Berlin.
So let me give you Randy Kirk's theory. You may have heard this. So there's a rumor. I don't know if this is true. So this is a rumor that it might be in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Wow. That would be interesting.
So
very interesting indeed.
East Coast. I don't know what that means as far as lithium availability. You are closer to Quebec. They have some stuff going on with raw minerals too. You're closer to Piedmont and North Carolina.
Piedmont is closer, yeah.
I don't know if it's a way of awarding Pennsylvania voters, like why Pittsburgh. They are the three river city, so there's probably some advantages in transportation.
What he said on the call was that they were currently building the third.
Okay.
So I don't think that it's.
I think we would know if it's in Pennsylvania then.
Yeah, I think so. they may be planning for one now, but let's have a look and see. I mean, I honestly think that the factory that's being built right now in Berlin includes a mega factory.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I'll just say this about my Y before we get to this question. I owned a Y, the previous Y, so I like the Model Y. So I'll read this question here. The new Tesla Diner Cinema looks amazing. How do you think they will be managing the audio, linking to each car's internal sound system via Wi-Fi or similar?
Wow, that would be something.
Yeah, you could do an FM station.
Well,
That
they
would
could
be
do,
pretty easy.
yeah, they could do it by way of Wi-Fi.
Mhm.
They could just broadcast by Wi-Fi. So why not? Why would they do anything else?
Yeah, I'm curious to see how that diner goes. It seems like fun. I'm a fan of some retro stuff in my media, so I like to play Fallout from time to time. That's a post-apocalyptic game where like a nuclear war happened in the 50s or so. And so like this whole age of the diner and all that kind of reminds me of that. So I feel like it's a fun thing to have like drive-in theaters and the diner like that and the whole art deco or retro look to it. And I'm curious if it's very successful if we see more of these because I think it'd be a way for Tesla to expand their brand. I'm curious your thoughts if they were to
Yeah,
spend
I would love to
a
see
little
more
more
of them.
effort on.
Love to see more of them. They've got a destination charging station, I think in Germany or France. I think it's Germany, where they have a swimming pool and they have an indoor thing. So, I mean, they could play with this very nicely. I think it would be a great attraction.
Yeah, the Gary makes a point about the sound system and Tesla's. I think it's a great sound system. I think it's one of the best sound systems you can have.
I agree.
I like to, unfortunately, I do like to enjoy movies with my family, and I don't think they want to sit in a Tesla with me. But one really cool way to witness a movie is you can have like a pair of Meta goggles, and you have this huge screen, so you don't need to like somehow mount like a big screen in your Tesla. You have a huge screen, and you have the Tesla sound system. You can connect it via Bluetooth to your Tesla, and so you got the great sound of a super premium sound system. I think it's even
Good
better than
idea.
you can install in your house.
Yeah.
And then you have this huge screen right in front of you. I think it's great. So question, stereo in the Model X versus a Cybertruck. Larry and I both know about this. So my opinion is, even though you're a co-host, I'm going to grab this one first. I'm going to be a little greedy. I think the sound feeling in the Cybertruck is a little bigger. So it feels like the stage is a little bigger. Would you agree with that, Larry?
I agree. The sound in the Cybertruck is second to nothing. I mean, it's fantastic. And the sound in the new 3 is really nice, really nice. But I think the Cybertruck takes the cake.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, my wife is she loves the sound in the Model 3. That's for her, well, that's what she drives. But anyway.
Does she crank up the bass, or is she in the classical?
Well, she likes sort of jazz or modern soft music. She likes jazz. She likes some classic rock and roll.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, he is Larry Goldberg of the Maverick Mind, appearing often on Farzad's channel. Some great interviews, most recently with Dutch Rojas, talking about reforming medical costs in the United States. And there's some real low hanging fruit that they talk about there. Kind of mind blowing. One little teaser I'll give is you think about diagnostic tests. If you get a diagnostic test at a hospital, it might cost you $300, but you might be able to actually buy it online for $30. And you don't know about it when it happens. There's a lack of information. So there's some real low hanging fruit that's out there that Dutch Rojas talked about. Also did a video with Chris Camillo, and looking forward to more on those, Larry.
Yeah, I got some very exciting interviews coming up. It's just I've been out of town quite a lot in the last couple of weeks, and so been behind. By the way, I am frequently on Herbert's channel, Writer with Herbert, and frequently on with Randy Kirk. So
yeah,
I'm around town.
The couch is open for you here at any time too, Larry.
Thank you, Brad.
So with that, I'm going to say bye for now.